From Larry Bird winning the competition in his warm-up jacket to Craig Hodges making 19 consecutive shots, here are some of the most memorable three-point contestants. Now, how about I start with Devin Booker?
With it. Long, deep three. Registers the three-point hit, and Booker barking right back at Beverly.
Well, three-point shooters are the most important members of a basketball team. So when there's a competition pitting the best of the best together, you know people are going to watch. And of course, it means a lot to the players that win. Devin Booker won the three-point contest in 2018, and you bet he was overjoyed about it. But then again, it wasn't just any win. He managed to set a record that is the most points scored in a single round. And as happy as I am for Devin, imagine being his opponent. Ready to fight for the #1 spot in the finals, but then he decides to make 28 shots. Yep, definitely not a pleasant experience, but hey, at least he got to see the legendary moment up close. It was a moment that won't be forgotten anytime soon, or ever really. D-Book went out there with a purpose, and that was to put his name on the map. Luckily for himself, that's exactly what he ended up doing. I mean, Booker became only the second Suns player to win the contest since Quentin Richardson back in 2005, and he was up against one of the greatest three-point shooters of the modern era, Klay Thompson. So to go out there and do what he did was simply phenomenal. But if I'm going to talk about a memorable three-point competition, I can't forget about Larry Bird's third win.
3 to win, and he's down to the last 3. There's 1. Now he's tied, and now he's the winner 3 times in a row.
He knew it when he let it go and was headed for that check.
Yep, Larry Legend, the man who could back up his trash talk like no one else. Larry knew his worth, all right. This absolute legend walked into a locker room filled with all-star NBA players, some of the best three-point shooters in the game, and asked who's coming in second. It was Dale Ellis, if you're wondering. And yes, Larry won that day. The best part's that Ellis had the lead because his opponent took some time to pick up momentum. But by the final money ball, they were tied. It must have stung, thinking for a second there that you could win, only to watch your opponent smugly hold out his index finger, signaling that he was first as the final money ball went right through the net. Well, this was no doubt one of the greatest moments in Larry's career. I mean, he's the only player besides Craig who has won the competition 3 consecutive times. And speaking of Craig, guess who's next on the list? It's Hodges himself. Now, this guy doesn't have all the drama surrounding Larry's win. He didn't walk into a room full of NBA stars and trash talk them. He didn't make a dramatic finish, and he didn't need to either, because the fact that he managed to make 19 consecutive shots honestly speaks for itself, and that isn't even the only record he holds to this day. He also shot the most shots in one round, that is 21 out of 25. He was literally automatic that night, and fans still can't wrap their heads around this spectacular performance. And speaking of being automatic, that's exactly what this guy was in the 2023 edition of the three-point contest. Yep, I'm talking about Damian Lillard. He was up against Tatum, Randall, Halliburton, Hield, Harrow, Herter, and Markkanen. And of course, Dame Dolla showed every single one of them who's boss. Damian needed 26 in the final round to beat Buddy's score of 25. The pressure was on, especially on that last rack. But Dame Time showed everyone that he has ice in his veins and won his first ever three-point competition. It wasn't a surprise, really. Lillard's one of the best NBA three-point shooters. If I'm being honest, the only person who's noticeably better than him's none other than Stephen Curry himself. Yep, the OG record setter himself.
Curry for the record. It's good! And there it is! Stephen Curry! The all-time three-point king in the NBA!
You didn't think I was going to leave that one out, did you? Well, I know you've been waiting for it, so here you go. Stephen Curry. Curry won against the Utah Jazz point guard Mike Conley Jr. in record fashion in 2021. Well, duh, of course he did. After all, the Warriors superstar is literally the greatest shooter who's ever lived. He won with a final round score of 28. I mean, Mike wasn't bad himself, as he came a close second with a score of 27, yet he couldn't take the top spot. Jason Tatum finished third with a score of 17. Stephen didn't hesitate in putting on a show in the first round. He dropped a huge 31 points in his first round and already had the audience excited. Most of the other contestants got eliminated after the opening round, but Mike gave Stephen something to think about with his 27-point barrage. But Steph, being the showman that he is, still won in the end thanks to his final shot. It's no surprise that he'd win the three-point contest, and this wasn't even the first time he'd done so. Stephen also took home the award in 2015 when he recorded 27 out of the 34 possible points. He managed 13 straight threes, which is second only to Craig in the competition's history. Now moving on, I have another incredible shooter who was on another level in the 90s. It's none other than Mark Price. Mark was a sharpshooter for the Cleveland Cavaliers and won the contest 2 years in a row. He gave an amazing performance in 1994 when he led all 3 rounds of the shootout. With a final round score of 24 points out of 30, he easily passed his opponent Dana Barros' score, which was merely 13. Not to mention, he cashed in 20 of his first 22 attempts. No one came close to Mark's score in the 2 competitions he played in. The guy knew how to shoot, and he was always clutch when it was needed. That's clear from the fact that he ended his career shooting 40.2% from the long range. Next on the list, I have another star shooter who's also retired, Jason Capono. Going into the 2008 contest, Jason was the reigning champion. He never really stood out as an exceptional player while on the court, but that didn't mean he wasn't talented. He truly shined in the three-point contest. During his 9 years in the league, he had a career average of 43.4% behind the arc. What really pushed him to stardom was his strong performance while shooting in the 2008 contest. Jason might have missed his first 2 shots, but he was locked in after that. He hit 10 consecutive shots, including hitting each of the 2-point money balls. He became one of the few players to win the contest 2 times in a row, and he's the only 2-time champion to have won the contest with different teams, once with Miami and then with Toronto. Though as great as he was, this next guy's performance in 2016 was even better. You guessed it, I'm talking about Killa Clay. Just a year after Curry won the contest in 2015, Clay decided to swoop in and take the next victory. In the first round, he managed a score of 22 and was instantly under pressure to surpass Curry's previous record of 27. Clay didn't break down under pressure, and even though he couldn't go over Curry's score of 27, he ended his contest with a 27 of his own, resulting in a tie. With this, Clay and Stephen became the first pair of teammates to have won back-to-back three-point crowns in the contest's history. It seems they're 2 of the greatest shooters in the league for a reason after all. Well, this is all for the best performance of the NBA's greatest all-star three-point contest.